Deja vu, I just been in this place before. Higher on the street, and I know it's a place to go home. Calling you, and the subject's a mystery. Standing on my feet, it's so hard when I try to believe. Alright, so here we are back in Altia. Again. Pay no attention to the fact that this has happened to Marth for 2 wars in a row. Okay, I'm sorry. We teleported in? How did he call his knights already? Like, teleportation's not really something you can predict. Like, sure, maybe Herd knows about it. He was around for Godot and Shadow Dragon, so he'd know of mass teleportation, but like, even if you know somebody can teleport, you don't know where or when they will. Unless they teleport behind you and say, heh, nothing personal, kid. Honestly, that one's been used so many times it actually is kind of predictable. Anyway, here's Iris's new tiara. God, I love how he's just like, oh, Zane did that. And handful is one way to put it. Probably not the way I would phrase it. Anyway, how is everyone? Alright, don't care about that. Okay, this will be useful since it's Marth and he has to be here. And hey, skill and speed's really good. Experience for Ogma. I mean, it pales in comparison to what he can get in an actual chapter, but it helps. Santo gets a frying pan. Okay, come on, really? It's a frying pan! People know what that's for! You can't just take it and turn it into a dyeing pan on a whim. We need that to cook! God! Why do we weaponize our tools here? We don't need to, we're fine on weapons. Anyway, here's this conversation. Can we just talk about the frying pan some more? Samto, what was with that? Why did you pick up a frying pan? Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure it counts as an axe if you really want to use it. It might be good for crit rate as well. But usually weapons like that don't really have a good might, though. To be fair, like, if that's a cast iron frying pan, it's gonna fucking hurt. I'm pretty sure I brought this up in Final Fantasy IV, but like, cast iron's pretty fucking heavy. I mean, sure, non-stick, whatever, you could swing that around. It'll hurt, but against somebody in armor, it's not too bad. Pretty sure even in armor, I mean, like, you wouldn't kill someone with it, but actually, depends on the quality of armor. I know nothing about it, but like, if you slammed it into somebody's armor and then the armor slammed into someone's head, that would probably hurt. Anyway, yeah, I said pretty much everything I was going to say on that conversation line. I don't like it, the first one's really bad, the rest is fucking milquetoast, hey, gender roles are dumb sometimes, which clearly I couldn't figure out. Me, the trans woman, would never figure that out. I've never thought about gender roles before. Thank you for talking to me about this, Fire Emblem. You've taught me a valuable lesson. Anyway, here's Julian's final scene. This one's alright. I mean, in fairness, like, I think a vast majority of the women in at least Shadow Dragon are kind of the self-sacrificial type. Well, not really, just more the bishops more than anything else, but it's kind of the character trait they all have, because of course, Marth's sister also has that, at least is super self-sacrificing as we know. And Nina's kinda that way? She's more depressed than anything else. But anyway, like I said, I actually like Julian and Lena together. They're kinda cute, but like, their relationship kinda depends on them being together. I don't like the theoretical Julian and Lena, so the fact that Julian just spends most of the game lamenting Lena's absence is kinda boring. This one's definitely really good, though. Seda and Ogma always have a good dynamic. Honestly, I'm a bit disappointed that Navarre got into Fire Emblem Warriors over Ogma. I mean, of course, Navarre could just be like a fucking reskin of Lyn. Alright, fine, we already had sort of a Myrmidon-ish moveset. But, I mean, come on. Ogma's just way more interesting a character. Navarre kinda just does the same thing every time. He's evil, and then a woman talks to him, and he's like, I'll turn no blade of mine on a woman. And usually it's Seda. So, it never really feels like the relationship ever grows. It's just, hey, Seda keeps recruiting Navarre. Sometimes it's somebody else, but usually it's Seda. Whereas Ogma learns to let his guard down. And it's actually kinda nice. It's not good to be so wound up all the time. Wound up and paranoid. I mean, I would have liked to see more of the two of them in Shadow Dragon, but, you know, Shadow Dragon wasn't exactly well written, so... You know, in the eventual, Mystery of the Emblem remake that they will definitely do at some points, I mean, it's barely a prediction, we all know it's gonna happen, right? I do hope they add more supports, and it seems like they will if Echoes is anything to go by. So, here's the map. Should look familiar. Except this time around, we start more at the top center rather than the top rights. However, we also have the complication of Abel. So yeah, Abel's an enemy. I'm sure Marth has something to say about this. I mean, yeah, sure, they're good partners and all in canon, but like, I don't know, considering the etymology of their names, that's actually kinda fucked up if you think about it. Oh, you know, Cain and Abel, best friends. Though, you know, sometimes Cain just feels like murdering Abel when he, I don't know, does some wacky shenanigan, like flip the table over after losing in cards. Alright, so, we have one person who can talk to Abel, but there is one more, and that, of course, is Abel's wife, Est, who is, of course, kidnapped again. Man, her introduction in Shadow Dragon was her apparently escaping with, like, a really powerful sword. And I mean, we didn't actually see her evading any enemies, but still, she had a cool intro. But then, in Echoes, she gets kidnapped, and here, she gets kidnapped. It kinda sucks, but, you know, she's the youngest of the three sisters, so she's gotta be the one in danger, all the time. They sort of make it a character point, but still, I don't know. They got my expectations high with, her and Shadow Dragon, but then they just keep dashing them. So, here's Dolph. Now, he's appearing right at the start of the chapter, so if you had to guess, you could probably guess fairly easily that he wasn't in the original Mystery of the Emblem. But of course, every character in Arcania is here, so they just toss Dolph in. And Dolph really doesn't like what Hardin's doing to Arcania, so he just waltzed right up to our army, and he's gonna help. So, even though we can't really do anything with Est, we've got two characters to talk about right off the bat, so let's get to that. So, for those of you who might be unaware, Est is actually the name of a certain archetype, which describes a character in the series who joins late, but has some pretty fantastic growth rates, and with a bit of training, though considering what you usually have to go up against by this point in the game can be pretty harsh, they'll turn out to be really good units. And for the third game in a row, Est is going to make sure that she's earned that title. Now, while her bases might not be the best, though that speed isn't terrible considering she's level 5, her growth rates are really fantastic across the board, with the exception of her defense and resistance. Of course, because both of those aren't exactly ideal as base stats, she is going to be a little lackluster in terms of actually taking damage. That being said, though, she'll turn out plenty strong. She has all the skill, speed, and luck you'll need from a Pegasus Knight, and, well, I mean, her HP isn't the best, so maybe that's not something to rely on either. Est will probably be more of a glass cannon than anything else. Of course, while training her can be difficult, you do have a few advantages, and I'm not just talking about the usual drill grounds. She starts with a C rank in Lances, which gives her pretty good access to any weapon you might need, so she's not just stuck with crappy weapons like an Iron Sword, which really wouldn't help that 6 strength. She's got stuff like the Steel Lance or the Killer Lance, you know, things like that that can really give her an edge. She also has the advantage of the triangle attack. Now, I of course have said in the past that the triangle attack isn't the best thing and I don't use it too often, and I stand by that for the most part because Pegasus Knights aren't usually the kind of characters you're going to want repeats of, given they have a glaring weakness to bows, and, well, in this case there's only one IOT shield to go around. That being said, though, considering my alternate file, I do end up using a whole lot of Pegasus Knights. Having a way to just automatically critical any enemy I come across with at least a fairly powerful weapon thanks to that C rank is really useful. Again, it's not always ideal to bring all of the White Wing sisters, but if you can, being able to just auto-crit everything is a really useful way to level Est up. And of course, at this point in the game, you should also have the Star Sphere. It doesn't do wonders for her considering her base stats aren't fantastic, but they should give her slightly more of an edge. Of course, she is less viable on later difficulties, considering the kind of shit you have to fight in those. In any instance, if you're able to train Est up, she's basically the best parts of Paula and Katria. So, like, I don't know. Even if it is late, she's got plenty of room to grow, and high enough growth rates to do it. It's worthwhile. Okay, so, the bad news is, even for a general, Dolph has some really bad speed. 11 is not good, and a 20% growth rate means you'll be fucking lucky if it goes up at all. That being said, though, an 18 in defense is a pretty good place to start, and I'm sure 55% could technically be better, but in terms of defenses, you never really see a defense that high. Unless we're talking about Horus and his 70% defense, which is, you know, really good. That being said, ignoring Horus and his amazing ability to be a tank, Dolph's actually not too bad in terms of being a tank. Good defense, amazing HP, and a decent amount of strength to do some damage with as well. His skill's not half bad either, so it's not like he's gonna have too much trouble hitting things. I can't really say anything too bad about Dolph other than the fact that he's level 5 and promoted, which isn't ideal. You know, you usually want to train up characters as early as possible, so he has a decent amount of room to grow, and considering how late he joins, it's not like you're going to be gaining that many levels with him anyway, but you know, technically speaking, the more the better. And like I said, I'm basically nitpicking at this point. He's a solid defender. Use him if you haven't already been training a knight. Or if for some reason you really like knights and aren't using Horus, I don't know, maybe you want to put on some limiters and not use basically the best guy for tanking anything. It's a possibility, to be fair. Unfortunately, Dolph can't actually reach this house, which, you know, is kind of what I want him to do right at the start of the chapter. So anyway, if you remember Shadow Dragon, this was, I believe, chapter 15? I made sure to check out the layout of this map in Shadow Dragon like a week ago, but I don't have it up at the moment. But I do remember that the gimmick was basically like most of the enemies started near the castle, so it was kind of a boring chapter in which you had to wait for them to come to you. Of course, the cell was still there, and in that instance you actually had to rescue Zane instead of Est, but nonetheless, yeah, if you didn't take the jail cell route, you kinda just went around the island and you didn't really meet resistance until about halfway through. So, unfortunately, you can't take out those healers, which is obnoxious because one of them actually has a new staff type, which is actually extremely good. It's a staff called Fortify. It heals all of your allies on the map. And yes, that is an incredibly useful staff that you can get for yourself. I forget if this one drops his, I don't think he does. But yeah, it is very annoying. If multiple enemies are injured, they will typically use that, and you can't actually get rid of them right now without aggroing Abel, and I'd much prefer to not do that. You can, however, remove the Ballistae, which they don't have aerospace, I think. I'm pretty sure they have, what's the flame one called? You saw it before anyway, I don't need to mention what it is. You make up for my failings, viewer. But anyway, yeah. You can take them out at least, but considering Sada's low power, that unfortunately didn't happen. She at least managed to get rid of the archers, though. That's pretty good. Now, Marth's in a bit of trouble on the left side. There aren't too many enemies that way, but you do need to clear the path very quickly to get to one of the villages. Now, you could use a Pegasus Knight to cover up one of them before the thief gets to them, because the thief will get to them fairly quickly, especially the one on the left, which I think has the better reward, so I'd prefer to save it. That being said, though, you definitely want a lot more units on this side, because, as you might have noticed, there are a lot of dudes on this side of the field. Once we're done with this part of the army, we are going to thin down Team Jailbreak, so that's just the necessary people for it, and the rest will follow Prince Marth, because eventually that team is going to have more to deal with. For the time being, though, let's take out these guys. Oh yeah, and it should go without saying, but do be wary of the guy with the Rider's Bane. That guy will fuck you up if your leading character is a Cavalier. That being said, though, Ogma's got good enough defense and HP where he could soak up a hit like that no problem. Oh, no, it's Thunderbolt. They both got Thunderbolt, which I don't think is one that's effective against flyers, and I'm certainly not checking that out now because it's difficult to remember what the Ballistae do when you can't use Ballistae in this game. Oh, that's right. Okay, so Thunderbolt is actually completely useless for the enemy in this game because actually it deals magic damage, apparently, which is interesting. However, it has the same use as it did in Shadow Dragon, and that it's effective against other ballisticians, which was helpful for you or the enemy in Shadow Dragon, because either of you could use Ballistae. None of your allies can use Ballistae in this game, so the Thunderbolt is just a 10-use, 10-might weapon. Why did they keep that? That's actually kinda weird. Anyway, though, yeah. Honestly, this chapter isn't too bad, and This is kind of the point in the game in which the game goes from really fun to sort of power through to extremely. Like, I feel FE12 is probably one of the easiest Fire Emblem games to just sort of sit down and play, because the story itself isn't too heavy, the maps are fairly fun, and there's nothing really too complicated, and nothing to really tempt you to grind either. Like, that's one problem I'd have with either Awakening or Fates is, I'm not the biggest min-maxer, you probably have picked that up by now. But, like, skills are really fun to get, especially in Fates. Not as much so in Awakening, just because of how that game handles reclassing, but god. Even if you're not min-maxing, it's just fun to give characters cool skills. So those games can be a bit grindy, but unless you're playing on a higher difficulty, there's nothing too grindy about this one. And I just feel it's one of those games that's like, very one more level-ish. You know, once you complete one chapter, it's really tempting to move on to the next. Oh, and of course, this village works like it did in Shadow Dragon, except instead of giving you a new character, they give you either a... oh shoot, what's it called? Strength drop? Or the one I went with, which is the Draco Shield. Now, the Draco Shield, I think, is more valuable just because it's harder to find them. I can't remember where you pick any up outside of, you know, the usual, ones you can find in the secret shop at the end of the game. Also, in addition, isn't this the village where you got Aaron and Shadow Dragon? I think it might be. In which case, I keep going to the left village. I am very biased towards them, but like I said in Shadow Dragon, I'm sure, that is technically the canon choice, because, you know, while it's conceivable that Aaron could return between games, I think it makes more sense for him to join the army in Shadow Dragon, and then actually become a part of the army for, you know, being in the military again. Whereas Samson's a mercenary, and he just kind of fucks off no matter what. Anyway, though, now that we've got that done, other than that, in terms of strategy, we're pretty much just waiting on reinforcements at this point. Oh yeah, and we're taking out a Ballistai, but thankfully, we crit. Zeta might not be the most powerful, but boy, can she crit when I need her to. So, Bord's gonna be a crucial member to Operation Jailbreak just because he's got a hammer, and there's a general in there. I think you can move Est around without him attacking her. I don't know why you would. It's kinda useless. However, the general, who I should state has a killer lance, which would be very dangerous to the unarmed character. If you open the doors, he will attack her, but of course, at that point you've probably got advantage. Or if you recruit Abel, he will attack her. However, of course, you can also recruit Abel with Marth, so... you can't actually recruit him with Marth after you've already saved Est, and then he'll just, I guess, never talk to her again, even though he'd be really worried about her, even though she'd escaped. Whatever. Event flags. Lack of dialogue, yada yada, that sort of thing. So I guess I don't really have too much to talk about strategy-wise outside of that. Like I said, more reinforcements are going to be our main issue from this point, and story-wise there's not too much going on. Like I said at the start of the chapter, we're kind of retreading old ground. We're taking back Altia again. Because, of course, Marth has to lose his country every time. That being said, though, I didn't quite finish up what I wanted to say about Adra in the last video, and I'm going to bring up Arcania itself again, because I feel that Arcania could potentially be interesting, though the execution isn't always perfect. That being said, though, I like Adra... well, I don't like him, but as, like, a backstory character, I find him interesting because, whereas most of the dragon section of the game, dragon arc, whatever you want to call it, most of it's focused on sort of changing the perception on the dragons. Of course, in Shadow Dragon, they're just the big evil lizards that you have to fight. But then this game turns that around, because it shows you sort of the plight of dragons, the kinds of things they had to deal with, and why they might be evil. And of course they also bring up Medius, and how to some extent, like, he's evil because he was angry at mankind, and he had every right to be. I mean, humans really fucked dragons over. In their disadvantaged states, humans were like, oh, well, guess we can conquer dragons now. And so they attempted it. But of course, Naga didn't really care for Medius's actions, so they sided with the humans instead. And because of that, for years and years, the perception was just, hey, humans, they're real cool. Dragons, they're definitely evil. And then Medius came back and wasn't really a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Nuanced villain. He's just kind of evil. So, while we have the backstory, which is potentially pretty cool, at the same time the game doesn't always live up to it. That's in part Shadow Dragon's writing, though. In fairness, New Mystery of the Emblem also doesn't follow up its backstory very well. However, like I said before, Adra's potentially interesting because while they made the dragons more sympathetic, in the old version of the game at least, they also changed the perception on Arcania. Of course, Arcania is known as the Holy Empire, Arcania, yada yada, all that stuff. And it is the strongest country on the continent, which is also named after it. It's also Arcania. So, Arcania is this big, great place, except, actually, it was founded on thefts and some guy stealing gems, an action which could potentially end the world. There's that. And yeah, he used it to fund an army, and I believe the phrase was, his army took over the world. Or at least the world they knew of. But seriously, Adra's not a hero, and Arcania is kind of a horrible place. And while it's depicted in the stories as sort of this tragic country that stood up against a great evil, and then fell and had to be saved by, basically, some bumpkin who was really good with a sword. No, actually. Adra stole the Shield of Seals, removed its gems, sold them, and then down the line decided, hey, the Shield of Seals is actually pretty cool. It's our treasure now, and we're gonna call it the Fire Emblem. Also, I stole Radivus, Parthia, and Mercurius, so, like, those are also ours now. They're the 3 regalia, they belong to Arcania. But no, that's also not true. Adra's kind of just this garbage thief who became king because he stole some shit and got super rich. And you know, it is kind of rare in general for Fire Emblem to have sort of, I don't know, I guess, we'll say realistic sort of, evil country or ruler. 'Cause, like, even when you have an evil country, they're usually just evil because they want to summon a dark god or something. But here it's like, oh no, they're just super greedy. And also they became the heroes because they were the ones to survive a great war and write history. So they turned history to their favor, and now they're super cool and great. And only the oldest dragons know that, actually, these guys are kinda fuckers. They kinda lied, cheated, and stole their way to power. But yeah, Fire Emblem is otherwise just generally like, here's the kingdom that wants to summon the Dark God, and here's the super cool kingdom that's actually pretty cool because, like, they're all about loving others and trying to bring everybody together, and also their leaders are so kind, even the ones who are kinda jerks, that they will actively fight in a war, because that's, like, the most unrealistic thing about Fire Emblem. I mean, yeah, sure, everybody flings fire around, and Seda currently is flying on a magical flying horse, but, like, no, the least realistic thing is, the monarchy really fucking helps, actually. They are both effective at governing and also care about their people to the point where they fight on the front lines, which isn't what actual monarchs did. I mean, I think that should go without saying, but, like, the entire point of war is that you get other people to kill each other for you, and you just sit back for a while, until eventually the peasants revolt and kill you, which, to be fair, is deserved. Wow, that was one hell of a tangent. I started with Adron, and then I got to the point of, like, Fire Emblem super unrealistic because Marth is out here saving his own country. Though to be fair, the villains also do that most of the time. Not as much, of course, because, you know, in games like this, Marth's in every chapter, he fights every battle, whereas most other villains don't actually take to the battlefield until you've actually entered their castle, unless it's like Walhart or something like that. But still, they do more fighting than, like, actual real-ass monarchs, sometimes. I mean, to be fair, some did fight. Depends on the person, of course. And I mean, you're more likely to hear about the ones that do fight, because they're the ones that are more interesting. Because no one wants to hear about the asshole who just sat around and basically ruined everything for a while. Of course, to be fair, I haven't really taken a history class in a while. What are all you youngsters learning these days? What do history classes even teach? I don't know, the Civil War again? Are you still fucking up that one? I don't know. Alright, so we're just about to the end. We've taken care of all the reinforcements. Oh, also before I forget, Thunder is worth 420 gold, Blizzard is worth 690 gold, and they're pretty much always right next to each other in shops. They've been there for a while, and at no point have I uttered the word nice at that. I would just like to rectify that now. I apologize. I don't usually pay too much attention to the shops unless they have anything super interesting in them, but it's because of that that I kind of assumed that there wasn't anything interesting, so I did miss the nice shop. I'm sorry, everyone. I've failed you up to this point. I can only hope you forgive me going forward. Nothing too interesting there. Axes and bows. I don't really need either. I'm guessing this is swords, lances. Oh, okay, so we've got rapier here, only one as per usual, and that means we also have a wing spear, which I believe I mentioned earlier. I really should have used more of either weapon. I didn't, even though I now have an inventory of them. I could feel free to use them, it wouldn't be a problem. Alright, anyway, we're gonna draw Abel over. Est will not actually aggro Abel because he won't attack her, but he also won't do that thing where he goes over and auto-talks to her, which I kinda wish he would. But of course, Board's good bait for him, since Board's not that fast and is unlikely to kill him. Of course, Abel does have that Rider's Bane, so don't attract him with a Cavalier. Just don't do it. I mean, like, you stabbed Board once. We're not that mad at you, Abel. It's fine. Yeah, sorry, Abel. I didn't use you in Shadow Dragon, not using you here. But let's talk about him real quick. Now, on to our millionth Cavalier units. Okay, so yeah, I know we've gotten a lot of Cavaliers, but to be fair, Abel's actually not too bad. He starts as a level 1 Paladin, so he's got plenty of room to grow. His base stats aren't half bad, and his growth rates across the board are pretty good. He's always going to get HP until he reaches his max level, and while his growth rates are a little close to coin flip territory, for the most part, they're all advantaged coin flips. So there is a slightly better chance that Abel will turn out pretty well. Plus, all the 60% are in stats he kinda wants. I don't really mind a 40% luck growth rate and a 40% defense rate too much. It's nowhere near as bad in terms of defense because he's got a great defense base, even if his growth rate's a little lackluster. The luck, however, could be a problem. If you don't get lucky, then chances are Abel's more susceptible to crits. So I guess just keep that in mind and make sure Abel always kills the people he comes across. And, you know, maybe don't put him in the path of any berserkers. They'll kind of just throw him off a cliff. Alright, and with that done, we're basically done with this chapter. Of course, there is one more general outside of the boss, but he's not going to be an issue. Especially since I gave Board the Star Sphere, which makes sense because Board is kinda behind at this point. We did all promote a chapter ago, and he's still unpromoted. But a +2 in every stat will really help him. Won't help him double, though. That's unfortunate. Wow. Did the axe break? Okay, good. For a second I was like, how did you not double a general? Board, I know your speed's bad, but it shouldn't be that bad. Alright, anyway, that's done. Oh, and we can promote Board, which is good, because that level up sucked. He is at max strength, to be fair, which kinda sucks. I do not like the level, or the stat cap being 20 until promotion. And honestly, the caps aren't even that high in this game. Of course, once you actually promote, they're at least a little bit higher, but I don't think they really go that much higher than 20. Like, if any of them got to 30, I believe I'd be surprised. Again, I don't know them off the top of my head, but I don't think... They're definitely not as high as Awakening's. I can say that for a fact, because Awakening's caps are super high, and Fate's as well, as I would imagine. Anyway, though, we're promoting Board to a warrior. Alright, well, his speed's still not great, but he can use bows, which I can tell you, I'm not going to. It's too late in the game to be leveling up a weapon from E. I don't wanna. Aww. I was kinda hoping I'd finish. Oh, wait, nope. I misremembered. I crit both turns. How could Arcania be defeated? A 24% crit chance, I would say. That probably didn't help ya. Ooh, and that's an excellent level for Marth. Man, I got pretty dang lucky. The only better luck I could have had is, if, Marth didn't get hit. That's the only way that RNG could have been better. Actually, to be fair, some defense and resistance would have been nice as well, but you know what, that was a good enough level. I ain't gonna complain. Marth does need strength, after all. He's kinda middling at the moment. 15's not fantastic, but Yeah, it's better than some people at their lows. I mean, several people died, but we're all really excited. Why did I get de-leveled? Why? Could we have a flashback? Because I did forget them. Okay, thanks. Also remind me to never leave my house, everyone, because the moment I do, somebody's going to ransack Altia again. Yeah, why does everybody forget that's also an important part of reclaiming your homelands? There are still a lot of enemies in the castle. Yeah, we're gonna ditch the tiara. No, we did not get any legendary power from this, and in fact, I probably should have used Iris a little bit more. I'll get into why in the next episode, but it's not a stat thing so much as a level thing. But yeah, we're gonna remove the tiara. I do not know what Zane's deal is with this thing, but I don't care for it.